nothing will go on. So then he left it at that for the morning. Of course, then we had a nice program for Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disappearance. Prabhupada gave a wonderful lecture based on the first 4 verses of the poem that he had written for his Guru Maharaj. Adore ye all the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May. So he explained those verses and gave a little background on them. Then there was actually a nice feast at noontime. They cooked some special preparations. They put them out under one of the trees there. There was like a concrete base to it. And Prabhupada came out and inspected it all, and he was happy with that. Anyway, so then in the evening again, there was supposed to be another Pandal program. So as the devotees and children gathered and chanted Hari Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari, and Govinda Jaya Jaya, Gopala Jaya Jaya, with great energy and enthusiasm, Prabhupada met with Jagadish Prabhu in his house. Jagadish was his secretary. He emphasized again and again the need to provide very nice, palatable prasadam. He told us that this was the crux of his plan to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the area. We shall spend for that. Why miserly? There is no need of miserly. You are going to earn money by agricultural produce, so how will that money be utilized? It will be utilized for Krishna's purpose. By prasadam, by chanting, by drama, somehow or another bring them. That is our mission. Congregational chanting. Always festival, and we shall spend for that. Immediately you arrange. If there is a scarcity of money, I shall pay, but bring them somehow or another. Tomorrow I want to see at least 500 men. I came here to see that, not to sit down in a room peacefully. Referring to the upcoming Gita Pratishthan meeting in Wardha, he said, there also we shall inform that meeting that we want to propagate this Krishna consciousness movement town to town, village to village, by attracting them with musical demonstration of Sankirtan, dramatic play, movie, prasadam. Somehow or another they should come to the temple, to the pandal, and congregationally chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, hear the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. So for this purpose, whatever expenditure is required, you should collect and spend. So this is the scheme of the Hare Krishna movement. For those who are educated, he recommended distribution of literature and scholarly presentations in the schools, colleges, libraries and universities. Taking assurance from Jagadish that he understood, he repeated his main point. To attract them to really nice prasadam, palatable food, we shall spend. Where is the difficulty? We shall take contribution from rich persons. We shall earn it ourselves, and we shall spend it to give them very nice prasadam. As people come to join us, he said they could be engaged in growing their own food, making their own houses, and making their own cloth. As soon as they understand, then they'll be glad to do it, and they will stop all this nonsense, illicit sex and meat eating, and then their life will be purified, and then they'll make more and more advancement on this path. So that is perfection, and that is our mission. He pointed out that people travel for miles to get a good meal from a restaurant or a hotel. And we cannot give them nice Krishna prasadam, he asked. Why? Why you cannot give? You arrange like that, first class. Simply for eating they will come. You immediately do it. When Jagadish asked what sort of prasadam we should give them, Prabhupada told him, you give them nice prasadam by which they are attracted. It doesn't matter. Khichuri, puri, kachuri, ladu, whatever they are attracted, we must give. Krishna prasadam. Don't waste. You give them nice palatable foodstuffs. Give them 1 first-class kachuri, 1 nice samosa, 2 puris. They'll be very glad. You make very, very nice prasadam. He was still agitated by last night's fiasco. What is this rubbish that the dog cannot eat even? They have done a great mistake, all rascals. I am very angry. I say that if you have got no money, I will spend. I will give you money. Why you should make such 10th class and no food at all? It is to be thrown away. Simply waste of grains and energy. Engage a nice professional cook and prepare nice foodstuffs. I shall spend for that if you have no money. Gentlemen who are coming immediately should be offered some nice prasadam. Please come here, take puri, kachori, samosa. The poor arrangements for the pandal was not the only incident of bad management that Prabhupada referred to. Several days ago, when Dr. Singh Ghosh had come to massage him, Prabhupada said, "The doctor comes. He comes out of love. But there's no prasadam. What is this? The doctor's coming, but we cannot supply him prasadam at 12 o'clock? So this man, Dr. Singh Ghosh, he was a physiotherapist. He used to actually treat the Nehru family. Jawaharlal Nehru, when he was alive, and then later on Mrs. Gandhi and so many other family members. And he had a hill station, he had a physiotherapy place in the hill station called Kodai Canal, which is in the south. So quite a famous person. And he had come to appreciate the devotees. He had come to check on Srila Prabhupada. He saw that he had all this swelling in his arms and legs from his kidney problem. So then he offered to come and treat him. So for about 5 or 6 days actually, he made a special arrangement. He came to Hyderabad, although he's very busy, and he was driving all the way out to the farm in the morning, spending an hour massaging Prabhupada, and then driving all the way back in again, about an hour each way. So Prabhupada was saying he had not taken breakfast. He asked for a little prasadam, and even at 12 o'clock, nothing was available. So he was very upset about that. Prabhupada was. Prabhupada reiterated the standard that he had told his managers in Vrindavan to maintain. Prasadam, as soon as they want it, then they must feed some prasadam according to the position of the person. We shall spend for that. I am not hesitating to spend money, so why is the arrangement lacking? Immediately you arrange for theirs and invite them. Don't make it childish. I want to see tomorrow many thousand people. If you cannot make attractive, then why will they come? Then it will be a failure. You make it attractive. Whatever money is required, I shall pay. Simply theory will not help. You make such prasadam as people will come and be mad after it. He asked for his other leaders who were still engaged in the kirtan outside, and asked Jagadish whether he had written everything down so that he could repeat it to the others. Jagadish assured him that it was on tape, and he went off to bring the other leaders in. The chanting stopped, and Mahamsa Swami entered with several other men. Prabhupada spoke with him frankly and firmly, again stressing the same points. He asked Mahamsa if he was satisfied with the turnout this evening. Mahamsa admitted that he was not. Then, Prabhupada asked pointedly, Mahamsa again excused the poor arrangements. Well, no, the people also, there was no advertisement that today there would be a program. So whatever it is required, you do it, Prabhupada told him. You give them very, very first-class prasadam. They will come for the tongue. Mahamsa nodded in agreement. He told Prabhupada that the local villagers like their food very spicy. Whatever they like, I do not know what they like, Prabhupada replied, but you prepare and they should come and eat. Whatever it may be, whatever they like, the villagers, you prepare. If you have no money, I shall pay the money, but you attract them. They will come here to eat. Oh, very nice thing. So this is wanted. He told us that the whole beginning of his creation of ISKCON was on the basis of prasadam. I made this movement successful simply by this love feast. They did not come to hear Hari Krishna. They came for the love feast. From the very beginning, when I was in that 26 Second Avenue, every Sunday I was giving nice foodstuffs, at least for 200 men. He relaxed a bit, and he reminisced about his early followers. Daily, at least more than 15 or 20, I was cooking myself. So that is the beginning of my movement. The chapatis with Kirtananda. First of all, he was taking 1 or 2, then 12. As we all laughed and Prabhupada's slight frame shook with mirth, he recalled a story that he was especially fond of. There was another boy, Stridish, 22 chapatis. Stridish, can I give you? Yes. I gave him 4. Finished. Stridish, can I give you? Yes. Prabhupada laughed in fond remembrance. Very nice boy. He was eating 22. So one day there was no money, so he immediately left. And then he came back after some time with some money. And where did you go? The shoe booth. So he polished some shoes and he brought the money. Laughing again, he told us that this was how his movement had developed. Repeatedly, he told Mahamsa that providing palatable prasadam was the primary concern. Telling him to hire a first-class cook and assuring him of sufficient money, he said, "So long as I am living, I shall go on paying. You don't be miserly. You bring devotees for eating, and then chanting, and then cinema, and then lecture, and in this way you have to develop. Not that people will come, oh, Hare Krishna mantra is here, let us go away. They'll not come. What do they know about Hare Krishna? They will come, oh, there is nice, good prasadam is being offered." Mahamsa, as compliant as ever, ventured to mention that last night's failure Mahamsa, as compliant as ever, ventured to mention last night's failure, somehow not quite grasping the reality. Well, some people I know, they said that yesterday the prasadam was not nice, and there was not nice, Prabhupada cut him off. It was not eatable even by the dogs, but you are less than the dogs if you prepare such things. I was surprised. You allowed a sweeper to cook. I was surprised. We have distribution of prasadam, not dog's food. Such rascals there are, you do not know. I do not wish to discuss any more on this point. You have murdered the whole thing and no return. And Prabhupada told him to manage like a businessman. He invests money, he gets a return. Spend it for Krishna. So that is wanted. There is no question of becoming a miser. I never did it. When I have got that farthing, I wanted to spend it. Immediately spend. What have I made this BBT? Immediately, 50% for preaching and 50% for spreading this. Easing off a bit, Prabhupada told him, so whatever is done is done. Now you do it very nicely. I want to see at least 1,000 men coming from the villages. So that was an interesting episode. And even despite that, they couldn't do it. Even after all that emphasis and chastisement, and, as soon as Prabhupada left the place, within about 3 or 4 weeks, the whole program collapsed. The leaders there, they were all arguing amongst themselves, and somehow or another, they just stopped. By early January, it was all finished, and they never really got it started again either. So another incidence of another failure to distribute prasadam was not long after that. It was just a month afterwards when we went to the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad. So Prabhupada had gone there on January the 11th. He was thinking to stay there, maybe for up to 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the response. But when we got there, then somehow or another the managers had really kind of messed things up. Guru Das and then Bhagwat Das, they were in charge actually. But due to, their naivete and, inexperience, they got kind of cheated on so many things. So they had arranged, to get a campsite. And the organizers had told them, yes, we're giving you a very nice campsite. It's right next to the governor's. But the governor's campsite was way, way away from the main stretch. If you ever go to the Kumbh Mela, you'll see, there's like 2 million people living in tents and pandals, on the riverbanks there in Allahabad. And, there was one big main stretch, goes for like a mile or so. And all the big main groups, they have their pandals, big, huge arrangements. They can have like 10,000, 15,000 people, coming in every night, listening to the speakers and seeing diorama displays and being, just to sit down and eat. And then, sleep also. Ours was way, way away from the main drag. In Allahabad, over the river, there's this very big viaduct train, very high up in the air, and we were just underneath the bridge. Actually, Prabhupada told me that was where they had cremated his father in 1930, that same spot. But at least for our purposes, it wasn't it wasn't a good place. So we had a pandal, and then there was a section for the tents. There was a little section for Prabhupada with a tent for him. But the tent that they got for Srila Prabhupada was a summer tent, not a winter tent. So, when we first moved in there were like 3 sections. There was this one section for his bedroom, there was a big middle section, and then there was another section at the other end. So myself and Rameshwara, we were in the end section. Prabhupada had the other end section for his bedroom, and then he had the middle section for darshans and for hopefully doing his translation work. As soon as we moved in, because it was, mid-January, so it was very cold, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, Prabhupada heard the buzzer ring. I jumped up. It was really cold, freezing, and I went into the middle section. Srila Prabhupada was sitting in the corner where we'd set up this, low desk for him with his dictaphone. No electricity. Somehow or another they hadn't managed to get the power on in the section where we were. And Prabhupada was just sitting there. He had this, everybody's seen that winter coat that he used to have, saffron winter coat. So he's sitting with his winter coat, with his gloves on, and he's trying to chant, because there was nothing else that he could do. And it was freezing. The wind was howling through the, the tent flaps. They were so flimsy, it just wasn't stopping anything. So he asked me, can you do something? So there was a carpet on the floor. I got some other devotees, they helped me. And we took the carpet and we kind of strung it up across the entrance flaps. And, it was hanging down, and that more or less kind of stopped most of the wind. But it was still very, very cold. So I woke up Hasadutta, and on his bus he had these small gas cylinders. And then they had an attachment that you could screw on the top, which turned it into a gas heater. So we brought that in, but because it stood about waist height when it was, set up. And there was no way to lie it down on the floor. So we had to just leave it like that. So we left it running for a couple of hours. Then about 4 o'clock time, Prabhupada rang the bell again, and I went in. And actually from, the waist upwards, it was quite warm. All the hot air from the heater was kind of hanging there. But from the waist downwards, it was freezing. And when Prabhupada was sat, the hot air layer was just above his head. So he wasn't getting any benefit at all from the heater. Then, of course, the first night there was no electricity, so there was no question of a pandal. Even when the electricity came on after a couple of nights, still there was no pandal because nobody could find us. Nobody knew where our place was. So the devotees had to just go out on Naga Sankirtan, and they were going all around the campsite. So that was very popular. People liked that. They loved to see, the Western Vaishnavas. And we had quite a big contingent there. There were devotees from Mayapur, from Vrindavan, from Bombay, from Delhi. So Gopal Krishna had just managed to arrange for the printing of a small Hindi book. I don't know whether it was on the way to Krishna or something like that. So he'd had those delivered to the campsite. So then the devotees, they found when they went out and did Harinam, people would gather around. And there were a couple of devotees like Chutananda Swami, because he was the sannyasi, he had his danda, and he had this uttorya, this top piece. So he would stand there with his danda and he'd have a pot. And he would shake the pot, shake his danda. People would come up and offer their respects, and then they'd throw a rupee in his uttorya. So like this, he was walking around, and the kirtan party would go, and people would throw their money into his uttorya, and then they'd give them a book. So in this way, they started selling hundreds and hundreds of books every day. So when they came back and reported to Srila Prabhupada, so he set up 2 different parties, and they were going out in competition. And then Prabhupada told them that now, you stay here until you've distributed all the books. So now the other part of the program that Prabhupada wanted to do was Prasadam distribution. It was a fabulous opportunity. And he actually wanted to feed thousands of people every day. That also was a complete failure. Somehow or another, the devotees thought that they were going to be able to go into Allahabad every day and buy, all the produce that they needed, or, all the grains and everything. But of course, there's 5 million other people, that are all, all there as well, buying their food as well. So they couldn't find any stock of anything. Just enough, for us to eat, but nothing on the scale that we wanted to feed, several thousand people a day. All the other groups, they brought all their sacks of rice and dal and everything with them. We had nothing. So that also, complete failure. No prasadam distribution, no pandal, nothing. After a few days, gradually, the word went out. Bhaktivedanta Swami is staying way over there somewhere. So a few people started trickling in for the afternoon darshans. But that was it. So anyway, Prabhupada decided, what's the point in staying here? So he decided to leave after 5 days. And on the evening of the 17th of January then, we got a train. Somehow or another we got a train out of the place. That was also quite amazing how that happened. When we were in Bombay the last week in December and the first 10 days of January, and then from there we went straight to Allahabad on the train. So somehow or another the devotees had admitted to book enough train seats, for everybody to go to the Kumbh Mela. Some were booked, but not many. And it looked like most of the devotees, at least from Bombay, were not going to be able to go to the Kumbh Mela. And they hadn't even actually booked seats for Prabhupada. Then just around Christmas time, this man turned up, Mr. Gupta. He'd only just met the devotees a few days before. Little man, but he was second in command of the whole railway system, in Maharashtra, all the way from Bombay up to Allahabad. So he was the, second in charge. So when it was told to him that, we don't have tickets, and of course for the Kumbh Mela, they make so many extra trains, and they add carriages to all the trains, and it's booked like a year in advance. So it's impossible to get bookings, like a few days before. It's just, forget it. So this man, he said, don't worry. He said, I'll make an arrangement. So what he did was he added an extra carriage to the train just for our devotees. And the way that he did it was that, the trains, they have a certain allotment in each jurisdiction. There's different areas, different zones. So that particular train, the extra carriage allotment, that was actually assigned already to the next zone. Like when the train left his zone and went in the next zone, they already had it planned. They were going to add extra carriages up to the capacity of the train. So he just put an extra carriage on and basically bounced the other jurisdiction's carriage off. Because he put one on, they weren't able to put theirs on when it went through, but he did it just for the devotees. So, that was how we got to the Kumbh Mela. Then he came to see Prabhupada at the Kumbh Mela, and then, it was already decided by that time Prabhupada didn't want to stay because it was just freezing cold. There was no preaching for him to do, and none of the programs that were planned were going on. So Mr. Gupta, he said, all right, he said, because now how to get out? We had no prior booking, and Prabhupada wanted to leave immediately. Another impossibility. So Mr. Gupta, he said, don't worry, you just leave it with me. So he did the same thing again. What he did actually was that the station before Allahabad, I think it was called Naini. So that station was still in his jurisdiction. And then when it crossed Naini station, it became the other jurisdiction. So what he did was he added another carriage to the train before it got to Naini. So there was nothing anybody could do on the Allahabad side once he put that carriage on. And then when we drove out, we went out in the night time. We had to catch the train like 10, 11 o'clock at night. So we drove out from the Kumbh Mela site. We drove up to Naini, but instead of going to the railway station, he actually had the car driven about half a mile or so down the railway tracks, before it came to the station. And then we were just parked there, and I was wondering, why are we here? We're in the middle of nowhere. The station's way down there, and we're here in the middle of nowhere. And then the train came up, and he actually had it arranged with the train driver. So they stopped the train exactly where Prabhupada's car was. and then he had a couple of guys with these big wooden steps, and then they ran forward, they put the steps up, and then Prabhupada got out the car, straight up the steps and into the carriage. It was really, really good. So anyway, we got on the train. A few devotees also returned back to Mayapur and Calcutta with us. So then, on the train, Prabhupada stayed up all night long. Rameshwara, he was kind of very enthusiastic about some kind of cultural presentations and preaching in America. And he was trying to, at that time, get some contacts with the politicians and people like that. Because in India, it's their culture, and it's quite, in one sense, fairly easy to go and see a government minister. Our devotees used to do it all the time. You could just practically walk into their office, sit down and have a good talk with them, and they'll be very enthusiastic to help you. You can't do that in the Western countries. You have to all the rigmarole and to get appointments and things like this. Anyway, Rameshwara was trying to figure out how to, get in on the top levels. So he spent the whole night practically up with Prabhupada, talking and, getting ideas and bouncing things off of Srila Prabhupada. So in the middle of the night, this thing came up about the Prasadam. So just before we left, the afternoon before we left, Prabhupada called in Gurudas and Bhagavat. And then he really, he was quite annoyed with them because of their failure to arrange, especially this Prasadam distribution. He really kind of told them off. So that was still on his mind. So as we went in the middle of the night then from Allahabad to Calcutta, Prabhupada dictated a letter, specifically about Prasadam distribution in the temples. And then when we got to Calcutta, Rameshwara typed it all up. So that, quite an important letter. It was addressed to all ISKCON temple presidents. And it said, "To all ISKCON temple presidents, please accept my blessings. Now you must arrange in each temple there must be sufficient stock of prasadam for distribution. You can keep first-class cooks, 2 or 3, and they should always be engaged. Whenever any guest comes, he must get prasadam. This arrangement must be made, that the cooks prepare 10 or 20 servings at a time of puri and sabji, and you can add halava and pakoras, and the visitors must be supplied immediately. Whenever a gentleman comes, he must be served. As the 20 servings are being distributed, immediately the cooks prepare another 20 servings and store it. At the end of the day, if nobody comes, then our own men can take it, and so there is no loss. You cannot say, 'Oh, it is finished,' or 'it is not cooked yet,' or 'there is no supply for cooking.' This must be enforced rigidly. The temple is being managed by Srimati Radharani, Lakshmiji, so why should there be want? Our philosophy is, if anybody comes, let him take prasadam, chant Hari Krishna, and be happy. Everything is being supplied by Krishna. Krishna is not poor, so why should we deny them? This should be done at any cost. There is no difficulty, it simply requires nice management. At the end of the day, you may sell or give away. If we believe that Krishna is providing and maintaining everyone, then why should we be misers? This means losing faith in Krishna and thinking that we are the doers and suppliers. We are confident that Krishna will supply. Let the whole world come, we can feed them. So please do this nicely and begin at once. Hoping this meets you all in good health, your ever well wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami." So a really very direct letter. I don't know how many temples are even aware of this letter nowadays, but that was Prabhupada's program. Anybody comes, immediately you can feed them. Yeah, and if you have some, excuse, "Oh, we don't have enough," or there's no supply, or this or that, or if you think that somehow or another, how are we going to do this? And Prabhupada directly says that means that you have no faith in Krishna. Yeah, a very important spiritual point there. Okay, one other incident of not looking after guests properly with prasadam. This was my own experience. in July of 76, of course, when we came to Bhaktivedanta Manor, then I had written ahead to my parents, as most of you in this temple know. They live, well, at least my mum, she lives in Scunthorpe. So I had left in 1971. I emigrated to Australia, and then I met the devotees in Sydney, and I joined after a few months in early 72. So initially I had written, to my parents and told them what I was doing. And one of the friends that I'd gone over with, he was one of my oldest school friends, he decided not to stay in Australia, and just shortly after I got initiation, he came back. So he brought some photos with him of me with my, shaved head and tilak and like that. Of course, so then my parents saw that, and they thought that I'd gone mad, right? So they were writing to me, oh, we're going to get the police to come and rescue you, and, like this, there was evil cult and blah, blah, blah. They'd never met the devotees. They had no idea what was going on. And I was writing to them and saying, look, actually, we're not this body, so you're not really my parents anyway. Like this. So it was a little acrimonious, for a while. Then eventually what happened was that, my dad, I think I remember, he rarely wrote. I mean, typical man. Right? He rarely wrote. But he wrote me this letter, and it was really heavy, and it was really critical of the devotees. And again, as I said, they'd never met them. He didn't know what he was talking about. So I wrote back and I just told him, I said, look, if you ever write to me again and criticize the devotees, you will never see or hear from me again. All right? So I said, now if you want to continue corresponding with me, you are not allowed to say anything about the devotees. So we kind of made a pact that, they wouldn't criticize the devotees and I wouldn't preach to them. It's just like, all right, today, it's sunny day, I'm feeling fine, we went here, we went there, that was it. So, anyway, then of course I became Prabhupada's servant, and the tour was planned and we were coming to the manor. So I'd written ahead to them, come and see me at the manor. So they came, and it was on the Sunday. Prabhupada had gone down to Bury Place to see Radha Ishwara. Then he got invited to Shridakshay Vishnu's house in Ellesmere Road. So he went there for the afternoon. So I had to leave him and I had to come back to the manor early so that I could meet my parents. When I arrived back, just as I was coming in, I saw them. They were just ahead. They'd just arrived ahead of me. So anyway, we had a nice get-together. They were friendly. They were sitting around. I let them sit around for half an hour on the lawn because there was a kirtan party there. So they had to, they sat down and they were just waiting around. And I did it deliberately so that they'd get a chance to hear some chanting. And then I came out, and greeted them. So I'm mum and dad and my brothers and sister. I don't know whether my sister came or not. Anyway, like that, a few. And then I took them around, showed them everything, the Goshala, and explained a bit of the philosophy as we were going on. My elder brother is an atheist. So we had a bit of a debate, about, spirituality and things like this. And at the end of it, then I took them in and showed them the deities. And my mum especially was really, impressed. She liked all the colours and the flowers and, the dresses. And then, I sold them a Bhagavad Gita. And I showed them this is, the philosophy. So my brother and my mother, they split the cost between them and they bought a Bhagavad Gita. Then I thought, okay, now give him some prasadam, because I knew what Prabhupada, would say. So it was about 4 or 4:30 by that time. And I actually, my experience was that the Sunday feast was always served out around 5 or 6 o'clock. So I thought I was a little early. So then when I asked the devotees, I want to give some prasadam to my parents, they said, oh no, no prasadam, it's all gone. We serve out at 12 o'clock. So there was nothing available. I couldn't find anybody to get me any prasadam for them. So I was kind of disappointed, but I thought at least I've sold them a Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, so then they had to leave. So it was like 5:30, the speed my dad used to drive at, it was going to take him 4 hours, to drive back from Letchmore Heath up to Scunthorpe. So they really wanted to go. And we were stood at the gateway saying goodbye, and then Prabhupada, arrived back from London. And what was his name? Charles Patel or somebody. He had lent his Rolls Royce. So, the Rolls Royce comes rolling in through the gateway. I see Prabhupada there. I said, wait a minute, I'll be back. And I ran after the car. So they went round this other side of the manor. And Prabhupada got out. And I followed him in. He went up into his rooms. So I kind of went in and just to check that everything was all right. And I was thinking I'd really like my parents to meet him, but I knew that Prabhupada was really tired. He just had an exhausting day, really, after being ill, for the last few days. So I really didn't want to disturb him. So somewhere or another, anyway, my parents didn't get to have a darshan. And they also, they were waiting to go. Actually, I discovered many years later that when I ran from the gate and followed the car, my parents actually came after me. And there was this little crowd, on the side of the manor near where the lawn is and the lake is. There's that entrance there. So somebody, had a video camera, and they filmed Prabhupada going in, and then they scanned the crowd. And in the very last frame of that film, I saw my mother's face pop up at the back of the crowd, looking like this to see what was going on. I don't know whether she ever saw Prabhupada, but anyway, it was interesting. So then I went back. I saw them off. Then I came back and I gave, I went into Prabhupada's room and I gave him my report because he wanted to know, so did your parents come? And so, he asked me what had transpired, and he was pleased to hear that they liked everything. So, they took prasadam, he asked. My face fell and I had to admit that they hadn't. Prabhupada's instant look of disappointment and his simple, oh, was it as much as to say, well, what was the use of inviting them then? So that was it. It was the one thing that I didn't do, and it was the one thing that Prabhupada asked. It was very typical. If it was something that you didn't do, or you're supposed to do and you didn't do, it was the one thing that Prabhupada would always ask you. So that was it. They didn't get prasadam. And Prabhupada was very disappointed. So I learnt my lesson from that. And actually the following year, I think, or 2 years later, I came back to the manor, and again I invited them, and then I had Balagopal. She cooked this huge feast for them, and I sat them down and I stuffed them with as much prasadam as they could get. Okay, so we can go for another little 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Okay, so prasadam is very, very important. I mean, we can understand that. That was Prabhupada's program. So another example of that was when some devotees were going to go and open a new center in Turkey. So this was on September the 6th, 1976. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. And Charanarvindam, the British Charanarvindam, he had, in the summertime when Prabhupada was on his tour, he had gotten into Prabhupada's back garden. And he used to have this nice lawn there. There's like a brick path and there was a lawn. And then all around there's like bamboo trees and tulsi trees. So Charanarvindam got in there. He dug a big hole in the lawn. And then he put in a pond. And he put like, around the outer edge of it was like lotus leaves. It was supposed to look like lotus leaves. And he painted them hot pink. And then in the middle he put this fountain. And on the top, somewhere or another, he found this little figurine with 4 heads. So he drilled a hole up through the middle of it, and he plonked that on the top where the water came out. So it looked like Lord Brahma, with the water spurting out from his top of his head. So, and then he set it up, and what he did was he put against the back wall, he put like a stone bench and a bamboo frame over it with some thatching. And then he had a little fan on the side, and there was a seat there. And so when Prabhupada came back, everybody was like really apprehensive. He's going to go out in the back garden, he's going to see this hot pink fountain, right? And what is he going to say? So sure enough, the first night Prabhupada arrived there, he wanted to go out and sit in the back garden. So we put some nice bolsters and a cotton guddy on the seat there. Prabhupada leaned back, Charanarvindam was there, and then Prabhupada said, so, switch it on, the fountain. So he switched it on, the water shot up in the air like this. Prabhupada smiled, he said, oh, very nice. So it was a success. So Charanarvindam was in, whenever Prabhupada was in the garden, he was Prabhupada's gardener. So that gave him the excuse that he could just come there and hang out, with Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada liked it, So anyway, Prabhupada leaned back easily on his bolsters. This was in the mid-evening. Bead bag in hand, chanting the Maha Mantra softly on his beads. And these are the boys that gathered. Vipramukhi was there, and there was a couple of others. They were the ones that were going off to Turkey. So Prabhupada told them, so I have got all encouragement. Go and preach. Don't be afraid. You simply present. Yarideka Tarikaha Krishna Rupadesh. Whatever you have learned from Krishna and from your Guru, just vomit it. Nice. Just vomit it. There is no need of becoming very expert. Simply whatever you have learned, that's all. Harikesh Maharaj suggested that the main thing to do was lots of kirtan and prasadam. Prabhupada smiled and he agreed. He asked his disciples if they knew how to cook. He was impressed with the long list of preparations that Charanarvindam detailed. Vipramukhi confessed that he didn't know how to make very many things, but he did know how to make sweet rice. Prabhupada grinned. Ah, that is very sweet for you. You Americans and Europeans, you like sweet rice, is it not? We laughingly acknowledged that we did, along with Oliver. Prabhupada nodded in satisfaction, and he gave us some advice on how to cook and serve correctly. So you prepare all these things. You offer to Krishna and then the devotees, and at last you take. Don't take first. You give all, as much as you like, then you take. Susukam kartam avyayam. It is such a nice movement. It is simply pleasing. To execute, it is simply pleasing. And avyayam. Whatever you do, it is permanent. Whatever little service you have given, it will never be lost. Avyayam. Therefore, Narada Muni, he says, Bhajam apak votat patet tato yadi. Even if he is not fully mature and he falls down, qua vabhadram abuddha musikim. Where is the loss? Whatever he has done, that is permanent, because that will grow. If the seed is permanently sown, then it will naturally grow. It will take some time, but it will grow. So he is not the loser. If he's a little careful, then it will grow. Malihana say bija karyarupan, shravana kirtana jali karye. Then the creeper grows, and at last it takes shelter of Krishna. So this is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Vipramukhi said, when we prepare a feast, then we should give and give and give. And when no one wants any more, then we should take. Prabhupada laughed. Up until he comes to this point, he said, gesturing with his hand, bringing it up to his throat. Not only this point, but this point. He brought his hand up to the top of his head. Eat as much as you like. We are not miser. You eat as much as you want. I shall supply. But don't waste. Eat. Don't waste. Harikesh and I began to laugh, not just at Prabhupada's mannerisms, but at the irony of what he had just said. Well, this morning you were just telling us that fasting is very good, I said. So now he's telling us eat up to here. Prabhupada laughed with us, but he explained, no, not prasadam. I never said. No, those who want to eat, fasting. That is for one who has not developed his Krishna consciousness. So for him, fasting. And for one who takes pleasure, oh, this is Krishna's pleasure, this is Krishna's food, I'll take. So that is the idea. So we are not devotees. Therefore we should first fast. And those who are devotees, they'll take as much as they like. I was telling fasting because I am not a devotee. This is Prabhupada. So he gave a self-effacing chuckle. For me, fasting is good. If I eat more, then achahara. I suggested that we could appreciate Krishna Prasadam without filling ourselves up to the neck. Prabhupada maintained his liberal mood. Yes, it is for the devotee. A devotee can eat, just as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was eating. Govinda, his servant, he was complaining, "Sir, so many things are lying here, and everybody asks whether Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken my preparation. Oh yes, he's taken, so I have to speak so many lies. You don't take, so what can I do?" So then he said, "All right, bring it, bring it." So then he began to eat. For 100 men's foodstuff stopped. He finished. Then he asked, "Any more?" So now only the bags are there. Everything finished. So he ate everything, one after another, one after another, one after another. "All right, bring, bring, bring." So he can eat. We cannot. So that was nice. Good advice. First of all, you serve, make sure everybody else is happy. Yeah, I know the many temples, because when I first joined, the server outs, everybody wanted to be a server. Why? Because they would make a stash at the beginning, right? They'd get something of everything and pile up their plates and put them to one side, and then they would serve out. But this is just the opposite of what Prabhupada was saying there. First thing is you serve everybody else out, then whatever's at the end, if there's something left, then you take. That's actually the system. We had a boy, I remember, in Sydney. His name was Bhakta Bernard. He used to eat at least 6 plates of prasadam every Sunday feast. And not small, I mean big, like this. And his favourite thing was halava. And one Sunday feast, I remember, he ate 13 bowls of halava. Yeah. And then he saved another 6 bowls, he stashed them. And we had a double-decker bus. He stashed them in the bus for the next day. Needless to say, he didn't last very long as a devotee. But anyway, in those days, that was, the system. Okay, so it's 20 past 8. Little bit more. So Indian culture, of course, Indian culture is, most important part of Indian culture is food. And in India, every region you go, there's a different style of eating. You go to Punjab, it's one style. You go to Gujarat, it's another style. You go down south, Kerala, or you go down to, Tamil Nadu, it's another style. You go to Bengal, it's another style. So many different regional culinary styles there. So on August the 2nd, 1976, Prabhupada was in New Mayapur, and he was enthusiastically discussing the possibilities of preaching in the communist countries. Since he was in such a congenial mood, we lingered on, relishing the opportunity to engage in discussion and be educated by Prabhupada's expansive realizations and his vast experience of life. He told us about the different levels of culture in India, explaining that although we don't follow the caste distinctions, still there is a clear difference in the cultural behavior of those coming purely from a high caste family and those from a Sudra family. I observed that there still seem to be many Indians who follow the regulative principles as a matter of social training, although their numbers appear to be waning. Prabhupada said that the Bengalis have lost their culture, but in other provinces the Brahmana class is still strict. So strict, he said, that no Brahmana would accept food even cooked by his own wife, because women were considered to be equal to the Sudra class. They do not even cook food by another Brahmana, he said. In Calcutta, where many from the Brahmana families had accepted service as policemen, the government had to provide them with special facilities. They take bath thrice, they cook their own food very strictly. The government had to give them a big hall for cooking. So it will not take much space, say little space, one small oven and demarcated. This is mine, and then this is yours, and this is yours. So within that space, they'll sit down, they'll cook dal, chapati, rice, one vegetable, and then immediately all the utensils will be cleansed and washed, and the space is washed and kept. So you'll like to eat. They cook so nicely, although simple. And I have got practical experience If you cook your own food, whatever it may be, it is healthy. That's psychological, even if you're a lousy cook. But if you cook, when you eat it, you'll think this is very nice, and you'll digest it. He contrasted that with life in New York. Whoops, what happened there? Where people spend so much time commuting to work that they don't have time to eat properly. 3-4 hours going to work, and again 3 or 4 hours to come home. And work 8 hours. So then what is the value? He's shattered. He has no other solace than wine and no other culture. No family, just some dog friend and television idea. That's all. So what is his life? Every man has got a dog friend because he has no family. Men, women, and television engagement. I have seen it, all this in New York. So, a little bit of a contrast. So again, the next day, Prabhupada was talking some more.